Earlier today, an appeals court ruled that Donald Trump must halt most construction to his prized gilded ballroom. In the ruling, the court writes, quote, each president is a temporary tenant, not the owner of the White House and its executive residence. We are aware of no instance in American history in which a president unilaterally and using privately collected funds demolished substantial portions of the White House that Congress authorized to be built and American taxpayers paid for until now. The court's injunction will not go into effect for 14 days to allow Trump to appeal up to the Supreme Court, which he has vowed to do. We're back with Norma and Melissa. Melissa, the appeals court goes on to say that basically Trump is arguing that he's a king, that nobody can stop him, not even the Supreme Court. This is from the ruling. Worse still, the defendants argue that even if they're acting entirely without authority and lawlessly, no court, not the district court, this court, or the Supreme Court, has the power to stop them, since the East Wing has already been destroyed. When asked when it became impossible for courts to stop the project, the defendant stated point blank, it would have been improper to enjoin it even on day one. And so your position is that this can't be stopped by a court? That the district court, this court, the Supreme Court, no court could stop the building of this today? Answer, yes. Imagine that you were wrong on the law. Imagine the statutes were as clear as could be, that you have no authority to do this and you've done it. There's nothing to be done. Answer, that is our position. I think a lot of people legitimately worried that we would enter, this constitutional crisis where he ignored a court order. I don't think people thought it would be over a home renovation project like the ballroom. Your thoughts, Melissa?
Well, I think people would have underestimated Donald Trump's edifice complex. But it's important to note here that the president actually got a real assist from one of his appointees on this panel. This was a 3-judge intermediate appellate panel of the D.C. Circuit. There were 2 judges who ruled against the administration to enjoin the ballroom project. But one judge, Judge Naomi Rao, who is a Trump appointee, issued a dissent. And basically she said what the Trump administration is parroting here, that the National Trust, which is the plaintiff here, doesn't have the authority, doesn't have legal standing to bring this case, that it is simply asserting a kind of aesthetic displeasure with the prospect of the ballroom project, not any real legal claim or injury that would be cognizable to a federal court. And that's effectively what the president is saying. Like, we already knocked it down. We've already done it. It doesn't matter if you have an argument that Congress needs to step in here or Congress needs to authorize this before I can do it. You can't even be in court in the first instance. That's basically the argument that the president is making. Not only am I a king, but there's no court where you can walk in and challenge me. So it's actually an even more kind of pernicious and alarming argument than simply the fact of this unrefutable executive power.
Norm, at a time when innocent people like your client are being targeted for criminal prosecutions and people in this country are being detained as young as small children at places like Dilley, I know it's hard to wrap your brain around a building that was knocked down. But the court does make the point that it wasn't his to knock down. I mean, the ugly, tacky things he builds in his own name with whoever funds his projects, that is one thing. But this wasn't his house to destroy. Your thoughts?
It's the people's house. And the court's opinion made sure to highlight the fact that he has solicited contributions for this. Let's not lose sight not only of the corruption of the rule of law, doing this in a way that thwarts Congress statutory oversights and requirements, but just the fact that the financial corruption that he's shaking down companies who have the strongest interests in his decision making to get the money for these kinds of projects. So we're litigating this one too. We have the case over the dumping of the toxic dirt from the destruction of the East Wing. It's got lead and chromium and arsenic. They put it in a public park and golf where it's leaching into the ground. The whole thing is another example of the corruption. And these stories are starting to break through. Donald Trump is engaging in these expensive, self-serving whims, taking money out of the pockets of the American people who are struggling instead of, as he promised, putting it in their pockets. They're facing a cost, corruption, chaos, and competence crisis because of him, Nicole. And they've had it. He's got the lowest approval ratings of any modern president at this point, headed toward Nixonian territory at the depth of Nixon's corruption scandals.